Welcome to the Scenario Podcast, your guide to mental health and well-being. Each episode, we uncover practical tools, discuss expert insights, and explore how supplements can transform your mental health journey. Get ready to learn, grow, and thrive with us.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We take your questions, your sources, and really try to pull out the most compelling insights for you. Today, we're tackling a really fascinating one. What is the opposite of depression? You said some great stuff, and our mission today is to kind of unpack that, move beyond just simple answers and get, properly informed. Because this isn't just philosophy, right? It's got huge psychological, clinical, emotional, even social angles for like building resilience and well-being. So, okay, to figure out the opposite, we first need a solid handle on what depression really is. I mean, beyond just feeling sad.
Yeah, that's absolutely the crucial starting point. Depression or major depressive disorder, MDD, it's profoundly more than sadness. The sources we looked at really frame it as a medically recognized condition. It has biological, psychological, and social dimensions. It fundamentally changes how people feel, think, and function in their daily lives.
And it's common, right? Like really common.
Incredibly so. The World Health Organization puts the number at over 280 million people affected worldwide.
Wow. That really puts it in perspective. So just to be clear for everyone listening, what are those core symptoms we're talking about, clinically speaking?
Okay, so clinically, you're looking for a period, usually at least 2 weeks, dominated by this persistent low mood or sometimes a feeling of just emptiness, but it's more complex than that. There's often what's called anhedonia, basically losing interest or pleasure in almost everything you used to enjoy.
Right, the things that used to light you up just don't anymore.
Exactly. Plus, there's usually persistent fatigue, feelings of worthlessness, maybe excessive guilt, real trouble concentrating or making decisions. Sleep gets messed up too, either insomnia, not sleeping enough, or hypersomnia, sleeping way too much. And you often see significant changes in appetite and weight in more severe cases. Unfortunately, there can be thoughts about death or self-harm. It really impacts everything.
That paints a much clearer and frankly more serious picture than just feeling down. Okay, so moving into the sources you shared, the immediate thing that pops up as a clinical opposite is mania. And this is where it gets really interesting, doesn't it? Because it's an opposite, sure, but it's definitely not like the goal.
Right, that's a key distinction. What's fascinating is that while mania is often seen as the psychiatric high to depression's low, it's absolutely not a desirable state. It's an abnormal, often quite dangerous psychological condition. It's not just feeling super happy.
So what does it actually look like then? What are the signs?
Well, people experiencing mania often have this inflated self-esteem, almost grandiosity. They might have a massively decreased need for sleep, like going days with barely any rest but still feeling energized. They tend to be much more talkative than usual, sometimes pressured speech, and their thoughts race, jumping from one idea to another really fast. Distractibility is huge. And crucially, there's often impulsivity and risky behaviors. Things like wild spending sprees, risky sexual encounters, making unrealistic plans, sometimes even delusional belief.
And that's typically linked with bipolar disorder, yeah.
Precisely. In bipolar I, you see these cycles between depressive episodes and these full-blown manic episodes. With bipolar 2, the highs are a bit milder. They're called hypomania. But the critical point from our sources is that mania is never the treatment goal. It can cause chaos, financial ruin, legal trouble, psychosis, hospitalizations, even harm.
That distinction is so important. Because I think a lot of people do mistakenly think, oh, mania, that's just extreme happiness, but it sounds completely different.
A world of difference. It's absolutely vital to get that distinction clear. Let's break it down. True happiness is generally rooted in reality, grounded in real experiences. It's usually emotionally stable, brings long-term benefits, and, well, it doesn't need clinical treatment.
Right. It feels good and it is good.
Exactly. Mania, though, often totally detached from reality, it can involve delusions. It's marked by intense emotional instability, rapid mood swings, irritability, and it brings no sustainable long-term benefits. In fact, it often ends in a crash, back into depression or some kind of crisis. It absolutely requires treatment.
Okay, so that really clarifies why mania isn't the answer, which brings us to the big question.
Yeah, it raises that important question for us, doesn't it? If that extreme high isn't the goal, what is the true sort of healthy, sustainable opposite of depression in our everyday lives?
Exactly. What does this all mean? If mania is off the table, what are we actually aiming for in, daily life or even in therapy? Because we're definitely not shooting for an unhealthy extreme. We want something sustainable, something like emotional wellness, contentment, resilience, balance. And this kind of tackles that idea that pure happiness, like 24/7 bliss, isn't really realistic or maybe even healthy.
That's a perfect way to frame it. The sources really lean into this idea that the true opposite isn't just a mood, it's more like human flourishing. That's a term from positive psychology. It's about living a life that feels purposeful, meaningful, engaged. Emotional wellness isn't about never feeling sad or stressed. It's more about building the capacity to experience both joy and pain. To navigate the full range of human emotions without getting completely derailed by the extremes. It's about healthy adaptation.
I like that. Flourishing, it sounds much more active and, well, real. So is there a clinical term for this sort of sweet spot, this balanced state that therapists might aim for with clients?
Yes, there is. In clinical contexts, especially when treating mood disorders, the goal state is often called euthymia. And what's really interesting is how clearly the sources define it. It's basically a stable, balanced emotional state, free from the big highs of mania or the deep lows of depression.
So kind of like emotional equilibrium?
Pretty much. Someone in a state of euthymia can generally handle everyday stresses, maintain relationships, experience joy, experience sadness, but without that instability taking over. It really is often the goal in treating mood disorders because it represents a kind of robust, sustainable well-being, not flat, just balanced.
Okay, that makes way more sense than chasing some constant high. It's like establishing a healthy baseline. So for you listening, why does understanding this whole mood spectrum actually matter? What are the practical benefits? The sources were pretty clear on this.
Yeah, understanding this is incredibly empowering. It's like having a better map of your own emotional territory. First, it helps clarify treatment goals. Instead of aiming for constant euphoria, which isn't realistic, the goal becomes something achievable, like wellness or euthymia. Second, it builds self-awareness. You can learn to recognize your own emotional states, maybe spot triggers, track your progress. That's huge.
So you can kind of see where you are on that map.
Exactly. Third, it's key for prevention. If you notice yourself drifting too far towards one end of the spectrum, you might be able to intervene earlier, maybe prevent a full relapse into depression. And finally, it empowers long-term recovery. The focus shifts from just avoiding sadness to actively building a meaningful, fulfilling life. It puts you more in the driver's seat.
So it's not just black or white, depressed or not depressed. There's a whole range.
Yeah, precisely. Connecting this to the bigger picture helps visualize it. Think of it as a spectrum. At one end, you've got severe depression, that persistent low moon, hopelessness, fatigue. Moving along, maybe you find dysthymia, which is like a chronic low-grade depression. Still difficult, but maybe less intense day-to-day than MDD. Then you hit euthymia, that balanced, stable state we talked about, with normal ups and downs. That's the ideal zone for functioning well. Then moving towards the other end, you might have hypomania, elevated mood, more energy, but not as extreme or impairing as full mania. And right at the far end is mania, with that excessive mood elevation and significant impairment. Understanding this range helps us place our experiences.
That spectrum visual is really helpful.
Yeah.
Okay, so if the goal is this euthymia, this broad emotional wellness, what does that look like holistically? This is where it gets really practical, I think, for building that balanced, resilient life. Wellness isn't just not being sick, right? The sources talk about it being an active, multidimensional process, choosing health. What are those dimensions?
Yeah, wellness is definitely a holistic concept. It covers several interconnected areas. There's mental wellness, clear thinking, emotional stability. Physical wellness, things like sleep, exercise, nutrition are key here. Then, emotional wellness, coping skills, expressing feelings healthily, resilience. Spiritual wellness, finding meaning, purpose, values, connection. Also social wellness, those important support networks. And occupational wellness, finding satisfaction and purpose in your work or hobbies. It's all linked.
And there are tools to help navigate this.
Oh, sure. Clinicians might use things like the PHQ-9 questionnaire to screen for depression severity or the WHO-5 Wellbeing Index. Mood tracking apps can be useful too. And therapy approaches like CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, help change unhelpful thinking patterns. MBSR, mindfulness-based stress reduction, uses meditation and breath work, plus positive psychology tools like keeping a gratitude journal. They all aim to build this multidimensional wellness.
So it's really like tending a garden, isn't it? A continuous process, not a one-and-done fix.
Exactly that. Wellness is a journey, a daily practice. It's about making those small, consistent choices.
Right. And that brings us to the real actionable stuff. The sources really drive home how much our lifestyle choices matter in promoting this wellness state. Let's dig into why these things work, beyond the basics. What are some deeper insights? Let's start with the physical stuff, movement, food, sleep. What about exercise?
Okay, yeah, physical activity. We all know about endorphins, makes you feel good short term. But the sources point to deeper effects, like how regular exercise, even moderate stuff like walking or swimming, can actually improve neuroplasticity. It helps the brain adapt and change in ways that directly fight depression. There's research, like from Harvard Medical School, suggesting it can be as effective as antidepressants for some people, partly by boosting BDNF, that's brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which helps brain cells grow and survive.
Neuroplasticity. Okay, that's way more profound than just a runner's high.
Yeah.
What about nutrition? Beyond just eat your veggies?
Well, omega-3s and B vitamins are definitely important. We hear about those a lot. But the sources also highlighted things like magnesium. A lot of people might be deficient, and it's strongly linked to anxiety and depression because it affects neurotransmitters. And then there's the whole gut-brain axis. It's fascinating. A healthy, diverse gut microbiome, which you get from fiber, probiotics, fermented foods, actually produces compounds that influence your mood. So avoiding too much sugar, processed foods, alcohol, it's not just about weight, it's about stabilizing that gut-brain communication channel.
It's amazing how connected everything is. Okay, pillar 2, connecting outwards. Social connection and nature. Why are these so powerful?
Social connection is huge. Loneliness isn't just sad. Some sources literally call it a super risk factor for depression, right up there with smoking. Strong social ties actually trigger positive neurochemicals like oxytocin and dopamine. It's about quality, the real conversations, feeling supported, not just scrolling through feeds.
Meaningful connection.
And nature. Yeah, getting outside, especially in natural light. It helps regulate our internal clocks, our circadian rhythms. It boosts vitamin D, obviously, but also reduces the stress hormone, cortisol. Even just 15 minutes in a park or somewhere green can boost serotonin and calm the nervous system down. It's pretty fundamental.
It really is striking how these foundational things we often overlook can be so impactful. Okay, final pillar. Cultivating the inner world. Mindfulness, stress management, how do they fit in?
These are all about internal regulation. Practices like meditation, deep breathing, even journaling. They teach you to observe your thoughts without getting swept away by them, especially the negative ones. This actually helps decrease rumination, that endless loop of negative thinking that's so common in depression. It can physically change brain activity in helpful ways. Essentially, it builds emotional regulation skills. You learn to respond to stress thoughtfully rather than just reacting automatically.
Okay, this has been incredibly clarifying. So wrapping it all up, the core message seems to be that the real opposite of depression isn't one single thing. And it's certainly not constant euphoria. It's more like a dynamic path towards wholeness, built on balance, resilience, finding purpose. It's about actively building a robust life.
Exactly, and that well-balanced lifestyle. It doesn't replace professional help if you need it, but it works hand in hand with it. It boosts recovery, makes relapse less likely. By consistently making these choices, how you move, eat, sleep, connect, manage your inner world, you're actively strengthening your foundation for long-term emotional well-being. Ultimately, maybe the opposite of depression lies in your own capacity, your capacity to feel things deeply, live intentionally, and handle life's inevitable challenges without being totally overwhelmed. It's about empowering you to make those choices day by day.
That's a really powerful way to think about it. Thank you. And for you listening, as you mull this over, maybe consider this. What's one small, intentional choice you could make today? Maybe in your movement, your food, your sleep, how you connect, or just taking a few deep breaths. One small thing that could strengthen your foundation for that long-term well-being. How might that one choice ripple outwards and shift your perspective, not just today, but maybe for the weeks and months ahead?
Thanks for tuning in to the Scenario Podcast. Don't forget to visit scenario.com for more expert tips, articles, and supplements designed to support your mental health. If you enjoyed this episode, remember to subscribe and share it with a friend. Until next time, take care of yourself.